Would you answer a message from an unknown app? Part 1. The face at the window. Well, let me tell you what happened to me when I did. This all started one night after work in Mosswood, a small town located in the forests of Northern California. Mosswood was one of those places where everyone knew everyone, and nothing much ever happened. The town had one main street with a handful of shops, a diner that served the best pie for miles, and a close-knit community that prided itself on its safety and tranquility. I moved here a few years ago, taking up a teaching position at the local high school. It was a peaceful life, exactly what I needed after a breakup with my ex of 7 years. That Thursday, I stayed late at school, grading papers and preparing for the next day's lessons. The hallways were empty and quiet, save for the occasional creak of the building settling. It was around 8 p.m. when I finally decided to head home. The weather outside was nasty, with rain beating against the windows and the occasional rumble of thunder. It was the kind of night that made you grateful to be indoors. I settled into my apartment, a cozy third-floor unit in a small complex on the edge of town. I was halfway through an email when my phone buzzed. It was a notification from an app I didn't recognize. The icon was strange, just a black square with a white dot in the center. I didn't remember installing it. Curious, I opened it. The app showed a black screen with a message in white text. "Are you there?" It creeped me out a bit, but I replied with a simple yes. The response was immediate. "Look outside your window." Normally, I would have dismissed it as some dumb prank or a glitch, but the timing was too perfect. Plus, I had this strange feeling in my gut, so, against my better judgment, I got up and peeked through the blinds. At first, I didn't see anything, just the rain-soaked street and the dim glow of the streetlights. Then, I noticed a figure standing under the street lamp across the road. They were looking right at my window, motionless. I couldn't make out any details, just a dark silhouette. My phone buzzed again. "Do you see me?" My heart was racing. I took a step back from the window, trying to make sense of it. Was it a friend playing a prank, or something worse? I didn't respond to the message. Instead, I turned off the lights in my apartment, hoping whoever it was couldn't see me anymore. For a while, nothing happened. I kept glancing at my phone, waiting for another message, but it stayed silent. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? Some creep was standing outside my window. In Mosswood, they'd think I was paranoid. I decided to wait it out, hoping the person would get bored and leave. About an hour passed. I was starting to relax a bit when my phone buzzed again. "I'm coming up." Panic set in. I lived on the 3rd floor, and the building's front door was locked. How could they get in? I rushed to the door and checked the peephole. Nothing. I double-checked the locks, making sure everything was secure. Then I heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible scraping sound coming from the window. I turned slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. There, pressed against the glass, was a pale face with hollow eyes staring straight at me. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the coffee table. The face didn't move, just kept staring. My phone buzzed again. "Let me in." I ran to the kitchen, grabbed the biggest item I could find, and dialed. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely press the buttons. The dispatcher answered, and I tried to explain what was happening, but I must have sounded like a lunatic. She said an officer would be on their way and to stay on the line. I crept back to the living room, keeping my eyes on the window. The face was gone. I felt a brief surge of relief, but it was quickly replaced by fear. Where did it go? I could still hear the dispatcher talking, trying to keep me calm, but her voice felt distant. Then the power went out. The apartment was plunged into darkness, and I could barely see a thing. I fumbled for a flashlight in the kitchen drawer, my hands still trembling. When I finally found it and turned it on, the beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing an empty living room. I moved slowly, sweeping the flashlight across the room, expecting to see that face again. But there was nothing. I checked the windows and doors again, making sure everything was locked. The dispatcher was still on the line, reassuring me that help was on the way. Then I heard footsteps. They were faint but unmistakable, coming from the hallway outside my apartment. I held my breath, clutching the bat tightly. The footsteps stopped right outside my door. There was a brief silence, then a loud bang as something heavy slammed against the door. I screamed, dropping the flashlight. The dispatcher's voice was frantic now, asking what was happening. I tried to answer, but my voice caught in my throat. Another bang, this time harder, and I could hear the doorframe splintering. I backed away, trying to find a place to hide. The bathroom seemed like the best option, so I locked myself in and huddled in the corner, the bat still in my hand. The banging continued, growing louder with each hit. I could hear the wood cracking, the door barely holding on. I prayed that the police would arrive in time, but the dispatcher's voice in my ear offered little comfort. Then, as suddenly as it started, the banging stopped. Silence filled the apartment, broken only by my ragged breathing and the rain outside. I didn't dare move, afraid that any sound would give away my hiding spot. Minutes passed, each one feeling like an eternity. I strained to hear anything, but there was nothing. Slowly, I unlocked the bathroom door and peeked out. The apartment was dark and silent. I crept towards the front door, which was barely hanging on its hinges. Before I could reach it, there was a loud crash as the door was kicked open. A figure stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the dim emergency lights from the hallway. I raised the bat, ready to defend myself, but then I heard a familiar voice. "Police! Drop the weapon!" Relief washed over me as I lowered the bat. The officer stepped inside, quickly surveying the apartment. He didn't seem to notice anything out of the ordinary, just a terrified person clutching a bat in a darkened room. More officers arrived and they checked the building, but there was no sign of the person who had been tormenting me. They took my statement, but I could tell they were skeptical. No evidence, no witnesses, just my word against the shadows. The power came back on, and the officers left, leaving me alone in the now brightly lit apartment. I couldn't sleep that night. Every sound, every shadow made me jump. The app on my phone was gone, vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. I tried to rationalize it, to tell myself it was just a bad dream or a cruel prank, but deep down I knew it was real. For weeks I lived in fear, jumping at every noise, checking the windows and doors constantly. But the person never returned. Eventually I moved to a new apartment, hoping to leave the nightmare behind. I finally started to feel a little safer, a little more normal. That feeling didn't last long. One night I woke up in a cold sweat. I was disoriented, confused. My surroundings were unfamiliar. As I tried to move, I realized I was tied up. Panic set in as I struggled against the restraints. I had no idea where I was or how I had gotten there. And then I heard it. That same soft, almost imperceptible scraping sound.